Whatever, I'm ready, man.
Okay, cool, man. Brad, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Sure.
So let's begin. You got so much going on in your life, but I want to begin with this. Surviving this pandemic was quite a thing. How many how many seismic tremors from that time period still exists in your life today that you're leading?
Oh, it's funny because my life barely changed
Okay.
because I sit here in a small studio doing podcasting and also writing books. And we've just launched our another book in a long series I've written together with Mark Sisson for a long time, Ancestral Health Leader. And this one's about the dangers of endurance running and the benefits of just leading a more generally active lifestyle, with the centerpiece being walking. But back to your question. I sized on my own, and then I came back to my little hole in the wall here and typed and talked into the camera and the microphone. So I had great sensitivity to how the world was disrupted, especially for young people and going to school. And I can't imagine missing my senior year of high school and when all these different things happened. And that's when I really found my destiny as an athlete. And, it was just 1 year on the calendar, but it was a life-changing path for me. So that was a rough one. And now I think layered over is the constant access to mobile technology, which has changed everyone's life, and I think made it, less interactive and less interpersonal. And people in my age group, and you can remember a certain huge segment of your life before there was internet, before where there was this barrier, and all we had was face-to-face communication, and we had to go out and find ways to entertain ourselves rather than be stuck to a screen. So I kind of have a heavy heart for that. And my kids are 27 and 24 now, so they started in with the internet world, early in their lives. But they had my daughter says, I'm glad I wasn't born earlier because at least I did have some time away from that before it kind of flooded the middle school and the high school campuses.
Yeah. So let's get into what you do on a daily basis. You've touched on it a little bit, but I'm going to do it by putting you in front of a bunch of grade school kids. It's third graders, it's career day. One of the kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
Yeah, I promote living a healthy, fit lifestyle, and I'm really encouraging people to do that forever because I think what this trend we have now is in our younger years, we're more active and adventurous, and maybe we played sports, and then the rest of our lives we talk about it and we watch others do things on television. So it's peak performance with passion throughout life. So I write books and I do podcasts and just trying to get everyone to prioritize these basic health practices that have been washed away by all the modern influences of comfort, convenience. I talked about the technology, and to me, it's easy for me because I live and breathe this stuff, but I am trying to share in a sensitive way that without your health, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
And I get into conversation, even with close friends, lifelong friends, family members, extended family, and I hear quips like, "Hey, everything in moderation." And I say, "Well, what do you mean by that? Because you're eating a toxic, heavily processed food that doesn't contribute to your health." So it seems like a cop out when you say everything in moderation, when our modern food supply and the marketing messaging is convincing us to consume things that are going to kill us. And we look all around and everyone's been touched by, cancer, heart disease, the major killers of modern citizens. It's tragic and it's sad. And we don't want to, then connect that to this series of choices that we make in the name of moderation. So I say that we need an extreme and strict and rigid approach to healthy eating because the influences are so terrible. And with that, we can probably do okay. But if
Yeah.
you start bantering around terms like everything in moderation, then you're going to slide down the slippery slope and be stuffing your face with things that are going to end up they're going to leave you with, hospitalization and accelerated demise that we see around us. That's the norm today, rather than, a tragic occasion of someone that, got stricken by a disease. This is where we're headed as the norm because of our choices that we can make every single day.
So what did you want to be when you were in the third grade? What was your dream for your life?
A professional athlete, Joe,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah, and I was obsessed with sports for so long, as a participant, as a little kid, and as well as a fan, and reading all the books and the biographies. And so when I got to the giant public high school that I first set foot on, I dreamed of being the star quarterback, and then I would be the point guard in basketball, and I would either make the NFL or the NBA. But when you show up at the big high school campus, coming from a small elementary middle school, I realized on the first day that at 5'5" and 115 pounds, I was not going to be starring for the football team nor the basketball team. So I very quickly found myself running in circles around the track, which is a wonderful destination for those who are too small and aren't, destined to be in with the big boys. And so that, kick-started, an entire career odyssey where I was a very, very serious distance runner. I did well in high school. I dreamed of going off to college. And when I got there, I got sick and injured over and over. So I found the sport of triathlon, and that enabled me to train really hard and try to get competent in these three sports and not get injured. And so that was a great transition for me away from the extreme endurance running, and that led to a 9-year career on the professional triathlon circuit. And after that, of course, I was continuing down that path of health and fitness oriented careers even to present day. So, today I'm m mainly writing books, podcasting, and promoting healthy living and healthy products. Really fun to be deeply immersed in it because it's a journey in itself where I'm constantly learning every day and trying to expand my horizons and remain open-minded and think critically rather than pick up these fixed and rigid beliefs that a lot of people do, especially when they're extreme health freaks. And then you kind of lose a lot of people along the way because you're dogmatic rather than sensitive to, not everyone's as knee deep into this stuff as I am.
That's interesting. When I was in high school, I was 4'11", and I had dreams too. I wanted to be a baseball player and do all that. I got into cross country. I was a runner. And now in my older age, I'm 52, my shins, I had shin splints really bad in high school. I do cycling now. I love it. I absolutely love riding the bike, you know. So I'm keeping that cardio, but I'm just seeing the world in the more fast version. But it's interesting because I was in the same boat. Like I ran after I got out of high school and did it and just was really into it. And yeah, it's so good. I mean that level of activity. I'm glad that the stars made me small enough to do something that has been just so beneficial to my life all the way up until now.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned running and the injuries because the centerpiece of this new book, Born to Walk, that Mark Sisson and I wrote, is reflecting back as longtime extreme endurance athletes and realizing that the nature of the sport is not really appropriate for most participants. It's by far too stressful, exhausting, and injurious for most devoted runners.
Yeah.
And the running boom is in full swing. It's more popular than ever today. The New York City Marathon had 54,000 finishers last year, an all-time record. And so, you look on social media, everyone's running and posting their data from their smartwatch. And the problem with just the plain act of running or even jogging is that it gets your heart rate into a zone that's too high to deliver an appropriate and nourishing, energizing training effect.
Yeah.
And so there's this concept of fat max heart rate in beats per minute. It's 180 minus your age in beats per minute. And when you're exercising at or below that number, so I'm almost 60, 180 minus 60 equals 120. So my fat max heart rate is 120 beats per minute or below. And that indicates that I'm emphasizing fatty acids for fuel. I have plenty of oxygen in order to burn fat. And so the effort feels comfortable. And I finish the workout and I feel refreshed and energized. But what happens with most joggers is they're heading out there and after whatever, a mile or two, because they're usually going 5 miles or 8 miles or 10 miles or whatever, the heart rate starts to climb into what we, oversimplified terms, we'll call it the sugar burning zone, where it's a little bit stressful. You feel a little bit depleted and exhausted at the end. You might want to reach for a quick smoothie or something to get your blood sugar back up. And if that's your pattern and that's how you train, the body has a tendency to break down because the effort is slightly to significantly too stressful. And then, because running is such a difficult sport to actually exhibit the correct technique, what happens is people shuffle along down the road with this typical jarring, breaking, heel striking, overstriding pattern. And that's because the actual running stride of landing gracefully on your midfoot and springing off the ground like you see the athletes do with the beautiful form in the Olympics, it takes too much musculoskeletal resiliency, which people don't have that baseline fitness capability because they're sitting in a chair for the most part for the rest of their lives before they take off. And so what we see is millions of people shuffling down the road on their way to recurring overuse injuries, exhaustion, and failure to reduce excess body fat, which is probably the main goal that most people are pursuing when they put on those shoes and head out there for that 5 mile run. So the book Born to Walk is instead contending that our true baseline obligation for health, fitness, and energy is to move frequently throughout the day at a comfortable pace. That's what the human is living their best life. And we see this from research with hunter-gatherer societies where they're out and about and they're moving all the time. And that's how the body works the best. That's how we get our fat burning capabilities optimized. Even our cognitive function depends on being active rather than sitting. So there's all kinds of research. You probably heard the quip, sitting is the new smoking, and how bad sitting is for you, and how it drives disease patterns in the blood, and all those kind of things are validated by science. And the simple solution is to just get up and try to make efforts to move more throughout the day, whether they're short ones, like a 1 to 2 minute walking break after a long time at the desk, or getting the dog out on a leash and walking for 5 to 10 minutes twice a day because you owe it to the dog and you owe it to yourself. And so we're kind of shifting the focus away from this struggle and suffer ethos that has pervaded the fitness industry for so many years and decades, where people think, gee, I have to sweat and suffer and get sore, otherwise the workout is not, scoring any points in my gold star book. And that has been a disaster for a lot of people who are just having a well-intentioned, well-meaning effort to get their butt to the gym or get their butt out the door, but they're doing it in a manner that's exhausting and fatiguing themselves and getting them injured over the long run.
It's interesting. My routine. I've never subscribed. I used to have friends that were really into that, and we would do that shredding, and you would feel it the next day or the day
Mm.
after. I've gotten to a point now as an older guy where it's like I don't feel like I have to be around all of this equipment. I can do push-ups, I can do sit-ups. I got this little thing on Amazon for like 30 bucks that's like a little cycle thing you could put underneath your desk.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah.
I set the timer, I do it for 30 minutes, I go, I feel everything. It's good. So I don't get to that point, but I do it all the time. I think to me, my key is it's all about regularity. And I'm an IT guy by day, I'm a technician, so I have all these buildings and I'm walking constantly. So there's
Mm.
just always this level of constant activity. So I sometimes think, do I need to do more repetitions? Do I need to do this? But I really feel like every day between vitamins and moving and doing extra cycling and just things that we can do as humans without all this fancy equipment to just keep ourselves up, I feel like it works. I mean, is that a logic model that makes sense?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I mean, the primal blueprint that Mark and I have been talking about for years is a fitness and a lifestyle regimen that honors our ancestral example and our genetic expectations for health. So number one is the human needs to move. That is our prerequisite, and that's what our genes expect from 2 million years of moving around frequently until only recent generations, because our grandparents and our great grandparents they walked around, man. They were
Yeah.
working in the factory or
Uh,
they were doing whatever. Even if they were, a lawyer, they had to walk down the street to the post office to buy a stamp to send the summons instead of clicking send on the button. And
yeah.
so only the last few generations, and tragically, like I mentioned, today's youth, when they started out from ages 0 to 10 and they were handed a device at whatever age rather than running around on the playground until the whistle blew.
Yeah.
So we have a critical obligation motivation to move. That's number one. And this is not just some guy on your podcast popping off. This is strongly validated by research in exercise physiology and medical science that the human needs to move as the number one objective, ranked even higher than adhering to a devoted fitness regimen.
Yes.
So there's this concept in research called the active couch potato syndrome. And they've found that even people who adhere to a pretty good fitness commitment, so they're the ones on the bike seat at 6 a.m. for the spin class 3 days a week, and the other 2 days they do boot camp or whatever. And then if they have strong sedentary patterns, like they hit the gym and then they ride the subway for an hour and then they sit in front of a screen and then they come home and sit on the couch,
Yeah.
they still have the disease patterns and the risk factors shared with people who are truly sedentary. So that hour a day, or let's say you go an hour every single day, that's 7 hours every single week. There's 168 hours in a week. So
Yeah.
the 7 hours that you're active does not counterbalance the terrible hazards of sitting and being still on the other hours. And what's also unfortunate about that is a lot of fitness freaks give themselves a hall pass to sit around and be lazy for the rest of their lives because they knocked out that badass workout from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m.
Yeah.
So number one is just to move more in general everyday life at a comfortable pace. You don't have to break your butt, doing 5 workouts a day to be healthy. And then, of course, tremendous benefits accrue when you perform, uh, when you have a fitness regimen that is well informed and appropriate for, again, our best return on investment. And that must include resistance exercise and putting your muscles under resistance load and strengthening and maintaining muscle mass and muscle strength throughout life. And a lot of the great fitness leaders today, number one best-selling book by Dr. Peter Attia, Outlive, he's promoting this concept that the fitness intervention is by far the greatest longevity intervention ever discovered, and nothing else even comes close. A higher rank than diet or any type of newfangled biohacking regimen where you're getting IV bags full of the latest greatest stuff. You just have to keep in shape and keep that muscle strength, because the opposite would be this widespread condition called sarcopenia, and that's the age-related loss of muscle mass, muscle strength. Dynopenia is the loss of explosive muscle strength. And when you suffer from this, which is again the norm, not some weird disease that you've caught, but sarcopenia is the norm in the older age groups, that's when you accelerate your rate of aging rather than stave it off as best you can. So it's as simple as keeping fit throughout the decades in order to, turn back that rushing, accelerated speed train to disease and demise. And relatedly, the number one cause of uh, demise and death in Americans over age 65 is falling and related adverse health consequences. So it's not like people are dying from the fall, but you fall, you break your hip, you're bedridden, you get weaker, you get pneumonia, your lungs aren't strong enough to cough it out, and you perish from that, or you just never get back to that point where you were heading to the gym a couple times a week, or you were walking around the park because of that broken hip or whatever happened with that fall. It was the first step toward your demise.
Yeah.
And how do you protect yourself from routine falls is you have to maintain that muscle strength and catch your balance on that one misstep where boom, all of a sudden your foot steps out and you're either going to support your body weight if you're strong or you're going to collapse and fold into the ground. So it's a major thing here that we need to engage in strength training. And then we also desperately need to use it or lose it in terms of pushing to maximum effort once in a while. So very brief bursts of explosive all-out effort. We call them sprinting. And I'm not just talking about sprinting on flat ground because most people, they're not quite adapted to just go out there and do that tomorrow. But you can sprint on a stationary bike or on a stair machine or on a rowing machine, something where you're pushing your body to maximum. And I'm only talking about 5 or 10 seconds of maximum effort. And then you rest and you take it down and you take an extensive rest period. And then you bust out another sprint and another. And you only have to do 4 or 5 or 6 to deliver a fantastic workout. And the return on investment from a properly organized sprint workout is vastly superior to a steady state workout that lasts for 6 or 10 times as long. So if you go climb on that staircase and watch TV at your gym for an hour and you do that a few times a week, hey, that's great. That's way better than just sitting around like most people. But if you can start to integrate these brief, explosive, all-out sprints, what happens is you get a flood of adaptive hormones through the body, anti-aging hormones. You also improve your fitness competency at all lower levels of exercise intensity. So if you get good at sprinting for 10 seconds and resting for a minute or two and then doing it again, when you go out there and hike for an hour or pedal your bicycle for an hour, everything seems way easier because you've taught your body how to operate at maximum performance. So everything else falls into place as you're more competent at that.
I remember years ago because I've been pretty consistent. My dad had a lot of health issues, and I watched how you literally can't get to a point where you can reverse time. It's really a choice of everything from diet all the way down. And I went to Manitou Springs, and I that was where I went for my honeymoon. We were going to go to New Orleans in 2019, but there was a hurricane. But I went back a year later, and my stepdaughter wanted to climb the incline in Manitou. And
Mm,
it was awesome. And I really hadn't been put to that test since I was a runner, and it felt so good. All of those things. And there were people that were like climbing up and down that were trying to do world records that they go up and down 4 or 5 times a day to do it. And it's like
wow.
those things when I get in the mountains, because in Kansas City, we don't have the contour or domain. I just love getting up and pushing myself in those situations. It's so much fun, man.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be day after day after day.
Right.
So we're really trying in the book, especially to, deprogram people from believing that fitness is about suffering.
Yeah,
And
right.
unfortunately, the major mainstream fitness programming that's out there today, the commercialization of sweating and suffering and thinking that your path to that lean, glistening six-pack body that the female's showing after she finishes her Peloton workout and high fives the bicyclist next to her and is dripping with sweat and wiping it off with a towel and then pointing at you and saying, get your butt on the bike, you can do it, or whatever. It's all
Yeah,
kind of this rah, really glossed over, glorification of suffering.
yeah,
And then you also see this in the personal training industry and at the neighborhood fitness centers and the chains where they encourage people to go in there and push their bodies really hard. And what you get from that is you get a nice endorphin buzz. So it feels great in the moment. It's like instant gratification, just as we get from indulgent foods or binging on screen entertainment or putting substances into our body that give us an immediate instant gratification. The same thing can be seen in fitness. It's little known or little appreciated, but if you keep going for that instant gratification endorphin high, what happens is your body becomes overstressed over the long term because the workouts are too difficult. And by the way, the harder the workout, the greater the endorphin rush after. So when
yeah,
you really, really push yourself hard,
yeah,
you're going to get a buzz for a couple few hours or however long it lasts.
yeah.
And then at 3 p.m. or the next morning or whenever, that's when you're going to pay the price. It's like being hung over from, a previous night of revelry.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's been a hero for you? Who's been your inspiration in your life?
Oh my goodness. My father had a great run. He died at 97 in 2019, and
Wow.
he was super strong and energetic and active and adventurous for 95 of those years. And then he started slowing down, and we said, "Oh, okay, you don't want to go walk around the park anymore." Or he was a great champion golfer his whole life. And I remember the last round we ever played together, and he did pretty well, but he was driving home and he says, I'm no damn good anymore, and I'm going to quit the game. And I'm like, Dad, you're 95 years old and you just shot a 43 for 9 holes. What are you talking about? You're better than almost all golfers in the world as an old man. And it wasn't good enough for him. So he had these runs. He worked as a physician until he was 95 years old. And
Wow.
then he finally stopped working at the clinic one day a week, and that was the end of his career. And so he realized, at the graceful, appropriate time that he got on this little gentle slide and slid down. And 2 years later, that was enough. The mind and the body kind of, quit at the same time. And so all we can wish for in life is to have this incredible run where we have that health span, feeling energetic and active, not just being alive in a wheelchair or kept alive, with medications and things that are making us immobile and not happy with, what we're ability to do. Is like, I want to go hard. I want to go strong for as long as possible. And if you can keep the decline at bay for long enough, then you're guaranteed that you're not going to have this long period of suffering that we see so commonly, where the last 10 years of your life, you're wheelchair bound or you're, not remembering people's names
Yeah.
because you already got so old feeling great, right? So at 95, my dad was still doing great, and then he started to not do so great, but he's not going to it's not going to be around till 115 where we're having to hold his hand and tell him which direction to walk. You know what I mean? So it's like, be strong, stave off the disease and demise for as long as possible, and then realize that, we're all going to have that little final blip to the finish line. Hopefully, it's a short period of time where the slope goes down and it's over.
So you're a best-selling author, you're a decorated athlete, you've done a lot, you've evolved to a wonderful place in your life. Of everything that you've done, what are you the proudest of?
Um, well, I guess I don't go there too often.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the question. You put me on the spot here, and I think I'm really working hard to put myself in the appreciation of the process and the present moment,
Yeah.
because especially as an athlete, you get so caught up when you're a competitor and you're trying to compete at the highest level. And my self-esteem had a tendency to get wrapped up in the results of what I was doing because I was a professional athlete. I was getting a lot of attention when I won, and I was really feeling bummed when I got my butt kicked. So it was this roller coaster ride that I really had to get over myself and that self-importance that naturally comes when you're an athlete. And the kind of, terminology and thinking that goes hand in hand with that is, for example, what are you most proud of? What was your greatest race? Well, Joe, was probably the Palm Springs event in 1987, or perhaps the event in Mexico when I kicked everyone's butt by 5 minutes in 1991. And the more I traffic in that kind of, reminiscing and self-glorification, it kind of takes me away from, my immediate goals and my immediate appreciation of the day, whether I succeed or fail or whatever my ranking is.
Yeah.
So I think, trying to answer your question, I'm most proud of the effort I've made to get over myself and stay in the moment and not get too caught up in the wins and losses of life.
I think that existentialist notion is the healthiest to be in because, yeah, you can get mired in all of those things. I was thinking the other day, right after New Year's, I used to be a big gamer when I was a kid, and I
Mm,
just don't do it at all. It's not something that's on my landscape. And I think it was because I had to win it. I had to beat Zelda.
mm,
I had to do, you know what I'm saying? It was like the
yeah.
pure satisfaction of just being in there and enjoying the ride got to a point where I had to beat it and I had to totally detox. And then I found other things to get involved with. But it's like, it's that notion. It's like,
Mm.
you can't get mired in that one race or that one moment because it's all, I mean, you're an endurance guy. It's all about, it's about the journey, right?
Yeah, and I'm especially thinking, like, as a parent, and when you asked me the question, I was thinking, what should I answer? I'm kind of tongue-tied right now. Should
Right.
I say I'm most proud of my role as a parent? And I'm going to say, catch myself there. I appreciate the work of Carol Dweck, the author of the book Mindset, and this kind of alternative approach to parenting that I've been thinking about for many years, ever since I was first exposed to her work. But for example, when you tell a kid, I'm proud of you for getting straight A's, or I'm proud of you for scoring 30 points in the basketball game and hitting 7 3-pointers. That was my favorite moment of what my son's basketball career.
Yeah.
But it's like, as soon as you say that after the game's over, you disengage the kid from owning and appreciating their own effort, and instead they possibly become a show pony for the parent to
Yeah.
say, I'm proud of you this, I'm proud of you that. And then talk about attaching your self-esteem to the outcome. If the parent keeps blowing smoke up the kid's butt to where now they see themselves or they perceive themselves as the piano player in the family or the straight A student or the basketball player dropping threes, it can very easily potentially turn into something negative where all the parent's trying to do is shower their love onto the kid. So you can praise effort and praise that day and night to no end because, everyone needs encouragement. But praising the results and praising these external achievements is a slippery slope. And furthermore, does a kid who just scored 30 and hit seven threes need some parent to tell him how awesome he was? Not really. All
Yeah.
you need to do is say, "Hey, do you want to go get a hot fudge sundae and celebrate?" But you don't need to keep, uh, you know, pumping up a kid. Nor when a kid suffers and struggles and fails, today's parenting mode is to say, "Don't worry, it's okay. We'll transfer you out of that class and get you a better teacher." We're trying to always rescue them and put the safety nets under them rather than perhaps the best parenting moment at that time could be, wow, that's a real bummer and that really sucks. And
Yeah.
that's it.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I could say I'm also proud of the parenting style that I adopted and committed to, where I didn't want to, distort those values and project the pressures and judgments of society onto my kid. I wanted to be some sort of a counterbalance to that, really.
My son's on the spectrum, so I'm involved with Special Olympics and I watch these kids and even the way my son Miles interacts with all of that. And, when he gets the medals, he doesn't even put them on half the time. It's just like, okay, it's just like it's just the moment. It's like when you get around that population of minds, you realize that there's something way deeper about our connectivity that happens to be physical, but it's more emotional and social. It's an event. It's different because I grew up doing sports, and you're pushed to do all of these things. But it's been so relieving as an adult to watch this world unfold that just shows that there's so much more magnanimousness to this life than whether or not you want a medal or not. You know?
Yeah, I think we've come a long way with our appreciation and our sensitivity in society, rather than just this dog eat dog mentality that we've been subscribing to for so long. And now I think, especially, I think people are more free to be who they are and not necessarily ascribe to all these checkpoints that society throws upon us. I still get bent when you hear people talking to a college student and they say, "What's your major?" And the kid says, "Oh, it's Russian literature." And they say, "Oh, so what do you plan to do with that?" And the answer is none of your freaking business,
Yeah.
or who knows what I'm going to do with that. I'm going to do something with my life.
Yep.
But it's, when there's not a direct connection between one's college major and one's career prospects, the adults tend to get a twisted face on there instead of just asking further follow-up questions like, "Oh, what made you interested in that?" And the answer for a lot of these kids is like they're going to take that major and then they're going to go do a startup and build an app that helps you find a parking space in a major urban
Yeah.
area and not have to put coins in the machine. That's
Yeah.
the answer.
Yeah.
In your face with that, man.
That's it. That's it. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. So let
Yeah.
me ask you this. If anyone wants to tune into your podcast, get Born to Walk, any of your other work, reach out to you, any of the good work that you're doing, how do they do that?
Well, I'd love for you to check the borntowalkbook.com website. The book is just launching now. We're talking here in early 2025. And you can visit me at bradkearns.com and listen to the B.rad podcasts. I try to focus on diet, exercise, health, fitness, peak performance, longevity, happiness. And I also have brought in a little bit broader of a guest lineup because you realize after being living and breathing how to eat the best foods and exercise and do the best fitness that if you're not happy and you don't have like winning relationships around you and an appreciation for the most important things in life rather than the quantifiable goals, it's kind of spinning your wheels to nowhere. So some of my favorite guests, in fact, have been relationship experts and mindset, mental health, peak performance experts, where we bring everything together. But of course, it starts with, healthy mind, healthy body, nourishing yourself with good foods, getting your exercise, getting your appreciation of the outdoors, getting good sleeping habits, prioritizing rest, recovery, and downtime. And then we can start talking about how you can not be such a jerk to your girlfriend or other, evolved topics. But first, you got to take care of yourself and then pursue these other ambitions.
Man, you're singing the right song to a Libra, man. There's all the balance that goes into that. It makes total sense. Brad, this has been revelatory. Thank you so much, sir, for your time, for your story, for your optimism. Best of luck. Have a wonderful 2025.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's fun to talk with you.
Yeah.